Hi everyone, welcome to Leap Initiative, where we teach DevOps engineering and Kafka administration. This is the Leap Initiative uh, playground, and we are going to go into it. In today's tutorial, we are going to look at how we can build a test end-to-end CI/CD deployment uh, to actually build an application, create a Docker image out of it, push it to our Docker hub, and then also pull it into our Kubernetes cluster. This tutorial, we're going to start everything from scratch. I'm not going to have anything pre-set up so that you'll see how you can use the Leap Initiative Playground to actually do a lot of things. It's going to help you from the end to end be able to be a well-rounded DevOps engineer. And in another tutorial, we are going to do for Kafka administration. So just some uh, basic CI/CD pipeline in here to get you familiarized with the concept of CI/CD pipeline, and in the actual classes you will be able to do much more in-depth CI/CD pipeline creation. So let's get right into it. So this is the Leap Initiative interface, and this is very valuable to helping us understand how to build a CI/CD pipeline. So if you recall the tutorials on introduction to DevOps engineering, where we explain what DevOps engineering is all about and what a DevOps engineer do, we try to give the mental picture, try to get you to understand what the entire flow is about, which we talked about. The developers, when they make changes to their code or their code base, they have it pushed into a remote location called the repository, which we have an example of GitHub repository in the other tutorials. When code changes by the developers are pushed into that repository, the DevOps engineer, the pipeline which the DevOps engineer will build will be linked to that repository, whereby once a push is made to that repository, the pipeline can be triggered either automatically or manually, and then the pipeline will run to take that code base and deploy it into our server where we actually want it to be deployed. So in this example, we are going to be building a CI/CD pipeline whereby it is going to connect to a specific repository that we are going to create. Everything will be from the ground up. Nothing is pre-created here. It's going to connect to that repository. Then the code that we are going to push into that repository, the pipeline is going to build a Docker image out of it, which we've seen an example of building a Docker image from Docker tutorial. You can check the video as well. It's going to build a Docker image, then it's going to push it to our Docker Hub repository. It's going to also pull it from the repository and deploy it into a Kubernetes cluster, which will spin up the pods for that our application that we've containerized. So we are going to see everything from the ground up. We are going to be using Argo CD as well for the complete end-to-end. So it's going to be exciting. This will allow you see a practical example of how to use the Leap Initiative application playground to be able to walk around and practice multiple times to build CI/CD pipelines, which is what you do as a DevOps engineer. So when we come down here, we are going to be using Jenkins. Jenkins is one of the most widely used CI/CD pipeline tool. People also use GitLab in subsequent classes and projects. We are going to be making use of either of these. But for today, we are going to be using Jenkins. So Jenkins is an open source automation server widely used for continuous integration and continuous delivery, CI/CD. With extensive plugin ecosystem and flexibility, it automates building, testing, and deploying application, making it essential for modern DevOps pipeline. So to create the Jenkins server, we are going to hit this button, Create Jenkins Server. So in the background, this is getting created, and once it's created, we are going to see this UI updated, and we are going to be able to try to access our Jenkins. All right, so the Jenkins has been created. So this command, we are going to be running this command to get the initial password, but we'll come back and see why we need to run this command. So we can access the Jenkins on localhost port 8444. What this does is you don't need to go into the AWS EC2 instance to try to install Java and configure it, to try to install Jenkins before you have Jenkins running. In most cases in the work environment, they may have the Jenkins already running, or you may have to maybe install Jenkins, but that is something you can quite easily do through one or two guides or YouTube videos to install Jenkins. What you really want to do is to know how to create a CI/CD pipeline. So we can access Jenkins on localhost port 8444. Now this is our Jenkins. When you spin up a Jenkins for the first time ever, this is the UI you're going to be greeted with. You are going to need to insert an initial password. That initial password is what we will get from here by running this command. So that is what we will get from here after copying that command. This is the initial password. So we'll get it, and then we'll come and put it in the Jenkins. Click on continue. Now we will opt in to install suggested plugins. So it's going to pre-install these plugins for us to use, but yeah, the Jenkins is still starting up. So this is just some pre-displayed UI before we successfully log into Jenkins. So we are gonna take a little bit of time to have all these folders pre-installed. Once installed, then we can be able to get into Jenkins properly and then begin to do what we need to do. So sometimes this could take up to 3 to 5 minutes. So when you kind of face yours taking long or taking like a longer time, it could be your network. So just give it time and it will get installed. But this happens only once. This happens when you're spinning up Jenkins for the first time. So if you're starting your Jenkins next time, it's not going to need to go through this phase. So sometimes you may have situations where those plugins may fail, maybe due to low, maybe network fluctuation. So just wait for it. It's gonna just try to have you retry, and it's going to work. So username, we're gonna give it a username. We'll say DevOps class, and password we can say admin. So full name, I can use DevOps tutor, and email address, I can use my email address. So we can save and continue. So click on save and finish, then start using Jenkins. Now this is the actual Jenkins UI that we are going to be greeted with. Okay, so in our actual class, we are going to be looking more at looking into Jenkins. What are all these? What are all the different parts of the Jenkins UI to better understand it? But for now, based on this tutorial, we'll just keep everything towards creating a CI/CD pipeline. So now, what is the actual first step when we discussed? So I'll spin up this. So the actual first step which we talked about was pushing into the GitHub. So now we are going to create a repository where we are going to push some code base into that GitHub repository, and then we are going to create the CI/CD pipeline inside of Jenkins. So the first thing is to get this, because the CI/CD pipeline will need to connect to this. So first thing, we'll get this, then we'll build out the CI/CD pipeline, and then we'll create the Kubernetes cluster on server side, right? So let's start with our GitHub. So I'm going to create, this is my GitHub. I'm going to create a new repository. So I will create a new repository. I'll call it pipeline test. See, okay, this is available. So pipeline test. So say CI/CD pipeline Okay, so we'll get it created. So this means we have created the repo side of things. So for example, I can change this, can change it to pipeline test. That was the name of the repo, pipeline test. That was the name of the repo. So now we've created that. Let's try to push some files in there. So now on my terminal, I'm going to try to clone this repo to get it in my local. So I'm developer 1, or I'm just a developer. So git clone, which if you're not familiar with these commands and all, please refer to the previous tutorial videos on this. So this folder has been cloned into our folder. So where do we have it? pipeline test. So we see it here. It has been created, so we can change directory into that pipeline test. So now we can add our files in there. So we are now the developers adding our file before we push it to the repository. Okay, so now we've added some basic file um, into our folder. So this is our code base, just a short lines of code, nothing much, but just to show the demo. So this is a UI application that we are going to, just a web page that we are going to see what it is at the end of the day when we build it. So this is our Docker file. Our Docker file is simple as well. It's exposing this application on port 80. It's using this baseline image, and then it's copying the index.html into this directory, and then it is starting the Nginx server. So this is what we have in our local repo. So we are now going to push it to our remote repo. So we do the git status. We see the files and folder that is being tracked. Then we do the git add dot to add everything. Git status again, and we see that everything has been added. Then we do git commit. So we say pushing code to the repository. Pushing code to the repository. Then we do git push origin main, because we are in the main branch. So how do we know we are in the main branch? We can do git branch, right? So we are in the main branch. So now we are trying to push from our local main branch to the remote main branch. So that's why we do git push origin main. So it has been pushed into the repository. So now if we refresh, we are going to see it. We are going to see it now inside the repository. So the repository has now been created. The repository has been created. Now we can go back into Jenkins and try to create a pipeline job that is going to connect to this repository and build a Docker image out of what we have in this repository. So in our Jenkins UI, we are going to create a job. And what do we call this job? We will call it, I will call it test pipeline. Test pipeline, and you choose this pipeline type. The type is pipeline, not freestyle project, not multi-configuration project. We are going to get to know what all these different type of pipelines are, but for this in the class we'll get to know the different pipelines and what they are. But in this tutorial we'll use the pipeline type. So description, we can add a description. For our pipeline demo. Okay, So we are going to leave this as they are. We are actually going to leave this as they are. So we are going to say pipeline script from SCM. So pipeline script from SCM, this is what we will choose because this is telling us that we are going to be putting our Jenkins file into the repository. So now, what is Jenkins, or how does Jenkins actually run, or how do we specify the stages and the steps that are going to run in Jenkins? That brings us to what is called the Jenkins file. The Jenkins file is where we configure all we want our Jenkins, our pipeline, to do. We configure it, we can tell it the first step, because I highlighted earlier that the first thing will be to connect to the repository, and then second thing is to build the image, the Docker image. Third is going to push it into the Docker Hub, right? So how do I tell it what to do first, what to do second, what to do next? They are all going to be specified in your Jenkins file. So here you select that the Jenkins file should reside in your repository. Why we keep the Jenkins file is in the repository is for us to easily make changes to the Jenkins file as we wish and just push it into the repository instead of maintaining the Jenkins file in the pipeline. If you maintain the Jenkins file, which if you use this, if you maintain the Jenkins file in the pipeline, let's see. If you maintain it, that means you have to paste it here. You have to paste the code here. Meaning anytime you want to do any minor change to the stages or the steps, you would have to come into the pipeline and try to, work on the pipeline itself. So you don't want to do that. You always want to just let it use the Jenkins file that is in your repo so that you don't have to reconfigure anything in here. When you run, it will pick up the latest Jenkins file updates in the repo. So SCM is nothing but source code management. And what is our source code management? It's our GitHub. Git is a source code management because it manages the source code, it gives us the version, it allows us to collaborate. So it's a source code management system. So Git, we'll choose Git. Now it's going to ask us for the repository URL. So this is that key point where we are connecting our repository, our CI/CD pipeline, to our repo. So this is this stage we are about to do. We are about to do this stage. So we'll take the GitHub repository, take the URL from here, you go into, and then you paste it. Now for credentials, in most cases the GitHub can be protected, so we want to create a credential to be able to access the repository if at all there is any form of authentication or restriction, like private repositories, right? If the repository is private, our repository is public, but if you have a repository which is private, which is mostly in an organization, the repositories are private. So when you do see a repository that is private, you need the username and password added to your Jenkins so that Jenkins can use it to authenticate to that repository. So we are going to create the username and password credential. So we are going to create the username and password credential. So in creating credential, we come here to this manage Jenkins. We'll click on credentials. and then you click on global systems global. Then here you choose, there are different type of credentials, but we are going to use username and password. So what is my username? My username for my GitHub is Ekele James. Then what is the password? The password will usually be a token. A token, you don't use your normal account password, you just generate a token. How do we generate a token? You can come to your GitHub and you go under settings. Under settings, you go to developer settings. You will see personal access token. So you click on classic tokens. Then you can generate a new token. You click here, you will generate new token that is classic. So you have to put in your password, and then let me put in my password. So now you can give the token a name. You can set the expiration date or the expiration time frame for the token, and then you click on this. So let me generate a new token, and then I'll delete it afterwards. So I'll call it test token. So I want it to expire after 7 days. By the time this tutorial is released, then this token must have expired. You don't want to expose your token. For people to have access to it. That means they can programmatically do things to your GitHub account. So now generated the token. So you're going to copy this. Make sure you copy it. If not, you're not going to be able to see it again. So you copy it safely, and then I'll put it here. I'll paste it here. Then the ID is what's the name for this credential. We'll call it GitHub. So this is our GitHub credential. We'll call it okay, so created. Okay, so we have created the credential. So another thing that we would want to do is also create credential for logging into GitHub, for logging into Docker Hub, sorry. So, but we will not do that now. We'll do it when the stage or the time comes for it. But keep that in mind, we have to do that. So we come back into Jenkins. This is our pipeline. We'll continue configuring our pipeline. So if you were configuring it and you left it and you come back, you have to come back here. You just click on configure and then you get back to it. So Git, we have to do the process again. This is the URL. Put it here. Then now we have credential that we can use. So this is the credential, GitHub credential to access our repository. That was the credential we just created. So now it says branch. On what branch should it look for the Jenkins file? It's on branch main, right? It's on the main branch main. If you see it, this is where it's specified, branch main. So that is all about that. So it's going to look for a file named exactly like this. You have to name the Jenkins file this. So this is how you call a Jenkins file. So this is what it's going to look for. If it's different, if it's a different name, then you have to specify, like you have to update it. If it's like Jenkins file, maybe you have multiple Jenkins file there. If it's Jenkins file Python, then you specify it here. So you apply and then you save it. So now it is going to look for a Jenkins file in our repository, but we don't have any Jenkins file in our repository, right? So now we have to add the Jenkins file into our repository. So now let's go into our VS Code and we'll write the Jenkins file. So here we'll create a file. I will call it Jenkins file. So you see, this is the Jenkins file. And the Jenkins file uses a syntax. It starts with pipeline. So I have an extension on my VS Code that actually pre-populates the syntax for me, the pipeline syntax, but I'll clear it out. You'll need to have that as well. You can, I think I will be sharing that exact extension for those that have VS Code, but I can try to write it out. So it's a pipeline like this, and then you have agent. Agent is something in Jenkins trying to specify if there's this particular agent that will run the job. But where you don't have a particular agent, you can just say any. So Jenkins is going to use any agent that is available to run the job. So then we have stages. Okay, so we have stages, and in the stages we now have stage. We now have a specific stage and the name of that stage. So we now have stages and the name of that stage. So we can call it welcome stage, for example. This is just like showing you the syntax for Jenkins file. Then inside the stage, we can now have steps. So the step is now where we will tell it what to do. So we can actually say echo this is a test pipeline. So it's actually going to do that. Then maybe the second stage, you just copy this. Paste, and then this will be maybe goodbye stage, and we can say this is the end of the test pipeline stage. So this is what happens, right? So first stages, then inside the stages, inside this stages block or field, then we have specific stage. So this one will run before this one will run. So that's how you specify what to do, what to do, what to do. Then inside here steps, it will now run what needs to run. Why we put it this way is that you can have multiple steps. So you can have multiple steps. So it can write this, it can print this out while it does something else. It does maybe ls-l, so that's something else. Then maybe it does pwd, That's like different things it can do. So it will go from this to this to this. Once it's successful, then it will go to this. So if there's any failure here, this one will not execute, because it has to from here, from top to bottom, and everything needs to execute serially. So now I will populate this Jenkins file with the actual Jenkins configuration for our pipeline. Now, this is the actual Jenkins pipeline that we are going to be creating. Now, this variable is just for you to specify, this block here is just for you to specify some variables, right? So we looked at what variables is, or what variables are, when we were looking at Python and Bash. So you're going to know what variables are. But variables is just a way to put a value to something, so that whenever you want to, inside your configuration, you can just call it, and then it will reference that value. So it's like a keyholder, or it's like a placeholder for a specific value of something, right? So it's like a tag. Let's say variables is like an ID, right? So if I put on like, maybe I'm a banker and I put on an ID, so that ID just gives you, I will use a better example, which is like a concert, right? Or you go to concert, you see some not too detailed form of ID, but the people that have specific roles, like people that are maybe the ushers or people that maintain the crowd in a concert or something, they put on something that lets you identify them and know that, oh, this is a staff here that maybe can help me sort out things, or they control the crowd or something. Photographers, they have like this sort of tag for you to know that they are photographers. So it's like that tag behind it gives you the real value, gives you that long understanding that, okay, this is a staff, this is somebody. Based on the differences of the tag, you could know that, oh, this is a cameraman. He doesn't need to now write all over himself saying, I'm a cameraman, this and that. So what it does, why they do that, is he can pull off that tag and give it to someone else, and then that person automatically now assumes that role of being a cameraman or being a staff or something. So it's what the variable helps you do. So now, like here, when we create a variable, this is the variables field. This is what we call the variable, and this part of this other part is what we call the value. So the variable is called app name, and what is the value allocated to it? The value allocated to it is test app, right? How is this valuable? Now, see where it is being used. For example, the app name is used in this file. Here we can use a better example using image name. For example, image name. Now the image name is a combination of this variable, Docker user, and app name. Why? Because if I ever want to change this, I wouldn't need to go in all the places to change what I want to change. Let me give a better example, maybe using diagrams from here. So let's say we have a variable. Variable, we said, is a link. It's just a link to something, to a particular value. So this variable points to a value. Variable points to a value. Okay, so a variable points to a value. Now I have a variable which I'm going to put here. I can call it lecturer. Let me make it all caps. Or tutor. I can call it tutor as the variable name, right? Now, tutor will link to what? A value. Tutor will link to a value. And what do I want to call that value? For now, that value could be James. So James is the tutor. Now, in a case where I'm writing something, so here in my file, I'm writing something. We have a good tutor whose name is James. So this is an example. We'll duplicate this. We'll say we can say our tutor who is very good did not show up today. And we can say his name is James. Okay, so for example, these are different things in our code base, and we are giving it different names, right? So we have, for example, 100 lines of code and all. These are thousands of lines of code. So these are thousands of lines of code. Right? So now you see that James is a bit duplicated. It's showing on all these entire lines of code. So what now happens is, if for any reason we want to change this James, our tutor changes tomorrow, or maybe we got a kind of instruction that, oh sorry, his name is not James, his name is actually Jamie, right? It's not James, his name is actually Jamie. So is IE, not ES, right? So this gives you an idea that, oh my God, we need to go each line and try to look for that James and change it to Jamie. So if you have to really think at scale as a tech person. So let's say we have over 2,000 lines of codes which this name James may appear on. So you want to scroll over 2,000 lines of code to change the James one at a time. That will be very daunting to do. So what this variable helps us do is, this James is going to be changed into a variable called tutor. So this is how we use variable. Then in here, changed tutor. or for better understanding, we'll make this variable tutor name. Tutor name. Tutor name. Tutor name. Tutor name. So now what happens is when the code is being rendered, it is going to replace this variable tutor name with this value. So when it's actually printing out or displaying this message, when the code runs, it's not going to display this. It is going to replace it and display James. So that means when you run it today, it can display James, and tomorrow when we now get the information that it is Jamie, we just come here and just one place we change this to Jamie. When we rerun the code, all these other places will change it to Jamie. We don't need to do it one at a time ourselves. So this is what variables are, and that's how we use variables. So in here we have specified the variables through this field or this block called environment. So we are going to be specifying what should be the name of our application. We can call it DevOps class. We can call it DevOps class app, right? My Docker Hub username is Ekele J. We are going to see it shortly. And then the image name will come from a combination of my Docker Hub username and then the app name, this. And then the image tag will come from the release, which we put here as 1.1.0. And then the build number is going to come from the actual pipeline run build number. So what's the next stage? This stage we are doing a cleanup stage, whereby we are telling the pipeline to always clean up the working directory before running a new pipeline, so that we don't have stuffs from previous pipeline run still affecting our new pipeline run. So this stage is called checkout from SCM. What is the SCM? The SCM is our GitHub. So checking out from GitHub means connecting to GitHub. So this is the syntax. You have to make note of this syntax. So this is the syntax it is going to be using. This is specifying that it is Git and the branch, main branch, and what credential should it use? GitHub, right? We created a credential called GitHub, so it's going to use that credential. Now, what is the URL of our Git repository? We need to update this to match our GitHub repository URL. So this is the actual repository it is going to be checking out to. Now, this is the stage where it will build the Docker image. Now, this is the stage where it will build the Docker image. So the steps it is going to run is Docker build-t image name, image tag, and you know how to use variables. So the variable is going to replace itself. That means the actual value is going to be replaced in here. Then it's going to tag the image to our username and password of our Docker Hub, not the use. It's going to tag the image to our Docker Hub username to be able to create a repository for us on the Docker Hub. Then in this stage, it is going to push it to Docker Hub. Now, pushing it to Docker Hub, it will need a credential, which we are going to create a credential called Docker Hub, because your Jenkins, right, it can't access an external stuff without having authentication. So how do you give it authentication? The username and password. So that brings us to creating a user and password in our Jenkins. So we'll go to manage Jenkins. And then here, credentials, we are going to create another credential. Also a username and password type of credential. And then the username, my username is Ekele J. How do I know that? I can show you my GitHub, my Docker Hub. Okay, so this is my GitHub account, Ekele Enenche James. This is my GitHub account. You all can see I have repositories. These are my repositories that I have on my GitHub. So my username is Ekele J. This is where you see it, Ekele J. You see it, Ekele J. So that's how we'll put this Ekele J. Then what is the password? The password is going to be also a token that I'm going to be creating. So here, you come here, you go to personal access token, and then you're going to generate a new token. So this is description for CI/CD pipeline demo. Just can give it a simple name. Just give it DevOps class token, right? So expiry date, we can say, I can make it expire tomorrow, right? We can say it expires tomorrow at a specific time. Then public read, write, delete. So we'll generate this token and you copy it. You have to copy the token. So now we'll put it into our Jenkins. What is the ID? We'll call it Docker Hub. So credentials for logging into Docker Hub, for logging into our Docker Hub and create a repository. So they also call it repository. So we got it created. So currently have a look at the repo that we have. Just when we run the pipeline, then it's going to have the authority to create a repo for us. So the repo, you have images in the repo. So you have repo and then your image that you push are going to be put into the repo. So we go back to our Jenkins pipeline. So yeah, so this looks good. We gave it the same ID, so we are not going to be changing this. It's going to look for a credential called Docker Hub or named Docker Hub, and which we already have. So this stage, we are going to take out this stage for now, because later on we are going to add it, but it's not needed now. Okay, so this is a post stage. This post stage is like this is the last thing that will show when the pipeline is successful or the pipeline fails. Okay, so this looks good. We are going to git add. We are going to git status to see. We see that it has been added. Then we are going to git commit -m. We'll say created Jenkins file, and then we'll push it, git push origin main. Okay, looks good. So we can check our repository and see that we have Jenkins file in there. So we see that we have Jenkins file in there. So one last thing we will need to do is that our pipeline is all set to be run, but it needs a plugin. So we are going to go into manage Jenkins and we are going to install plugins. So plugins are what extend the functionality of Jenkins. So if you want to do anything, you have to install the plugin for that functionality so that it can extend Jenkins functionality. So we want to install plugin for Jenkins to be able to talk to Docker Hub and be able to interact with Docker Hub using our credentials. So we're going to manage Jenkins. And then we come to plugins right here. So we go to available plugins and we type Docker because we want to use Docker related plugins. You click this Docker API, Docker build step, and this. So about these 6 plugins we need. So we are going to install these plugins. So it's installing. We'll give it some time. We are going to click for Jenkins to restart when installation has been completed. We're going to click for Jenkins. We are going to click for Jenkins to restart after installation is complete. So that's very good, so that it gets restarted to pick up those plugins functionality properly, and then we can be able to use it. So we'll just give it some time for it to get installed. Okay, so it has restarted, it has installed, and refreshing it got it restarted. So put in our username. Our username was DevOps class, I believe, DevOps class. And then our password was admin. So we get signed in. Now we can run our pipeline because the plugin has been installed, or we can try to verify that the plugins are installed. Go to manage Jenkins, then we'll go to plugins. We are going to go to installed plugins and we'll type Docker, right? So we see that they have been installed. So now we're going to our pipeline, and then you click on this to build the pipeline. What is it going to do? It's going to go into our GitHub repository and use this Jenkins file to know what to do. So build now. So it has started building the first pipeline. or the first run of our pipeline is building now. So this is how you will come into the Jenkins to start this pipeline build whenever the developers push into the repository. So this is how you come in here and you click on build now for the pipeline to actually build. So in some cases we can see it has built successfully. We can check the console output. We see that started by user DevOps tutor. That's the user that we added when we were setting up the Jenkins, and then it goes through the steps. It says the steps that cloning remote git repository, this repository, it's cloning this repository, so it gets to see all the files that are in there. It, the commit message that we have in there, it did all that it needs to do. Then this is where it is building the Docker image. I told you that it is going to replace those variables with the actual value. So this is the actual value. We had ekele J and we had DevOps class app. So if you see it, we had ekele J here and we had DevOps class app here. So the image tag is the release, which is 1.0.0, then -1. Why is it -1? Dash, look at the dash here. Dash, you see this dash? Then build number. What is the build number? The build number is this. #1 means build number 1. So this is why it populated it like this, right? This is how it got to have the image name. Then it does what it needs to do after creating the image. It tagged the image name to our repository, and then it logged in into our Docker Hub. It logged in Docker login -u ekele J, and then the password, it put in the password, but it does not display it here because that's not a good security practice to display our token in the logs. So it is hidden, but it put it in there. So now we see login successfully. So now it is pushing, it pushed the image into our Docker Hub. So we are going to see this repository. We are going to see this new repository created in my Docker Hub. So this is just like, pushing all that it did and all that it pushed. It pushed different layers, and then we see success, finished, success. So successfully built and pushed this image. So now let's go into my Docker Hub repositories, and then we refresh. We should see that repository created. So this is it, created about 2 hours ago, like for example, right? Created. So when we go in here, we'll see an image inside this repository. So we see this image, right? This is the tag of the image. And what is the image name? ekele J DevOps class app, and then the image tag 1.0.0-1. So when we build, if we run the pipeline again, we are going to see it change to 1.0.0-2. So let's just do that for us to see it again. So you click on build now. So this is how you come anytime you want to rerun the pipeline. You click on build now. So it's building again. We can follow the console output and see as it's going. Now it's already in the stage of logging into Docker Hub. Now it is in the stage of pushing it. Now, success. Pipeline has run. So if you could recall, I was saying in the earlier tutorial about what a DevOps engineer does and everything, I was saying that if you have your pipeline run and it takes about 5 minutes to 10 minutes to run, then there's something very wrong with your pipeline. So usually it takes a couple seconds for pipeline to completely run. Although this is not a too much kind of crazy pipeline, it doesn't have a lot going on, but yeah, it took 58 seconds to run this pipeline. So when we refresh, we are going to see a new image, right? So we see it, right? 1.0.0-2. So it's a new image now push. Okay, so sometimes it says about 2 hours ago. This it's actually quite like couple seconds or minutes ago, but this is just something from the Docker UI and everything. Okay, so we see it. This stage, let's explain what we've done so far. So this stage so far has, this pipeline so far has built so currently this pipeline so far, it has built the image from our application, then it has pushed it to our Docker Hub. So if we want someone to run our image now, we can just tell the person, go to this and run this, right? Go to, just give the person the image name. What was our image name? Our image name is this. So we can give someone this and column, you just add column to it and then give it this tag so that it will pull this specific image. So this is what we've done as a basic thing. So looking at this, this is what the pipeline has done for now. So remaining this stage. So how did the pipeline build our app into the Docker image? We need to follow this carefully so that we don't miss anything. So in my repo in here, I have the Docker file. Now, what is this Docker file? This Docker file, if you look at the other tutorial on Docker and containerization, we need a Docker file, which is what we'll use to create the Docker image. So this our Jenkins is like the Jenkins pipeline is actually you, the engineer, or you, the tech person. What you would have done manually, you've written it into this intelligent CI/CD pipeline to do it. So this Docker file, you are supposed to run a command called docker build dash. If you go back to the tutorial, you'll see the command that we ran. So Docker file will use it, which all this commands and all we explained there. So all you just need to do is that this Jenkins pipeline is now running that command for you. This is where it ran that command, so you can check. So sh, this sh that you see is just like telling it that it is a bash command, like it's Linux command. So it's telling it, oh, this is a Linux command, treat it as a Linux command. So it runs this. This is the actual command that it ran. So it ran this, and if you recall from that video, from the tutorial, this is the actual command that we ran, and we specified the image name and then the tag. So that is what the pipeline is doing. What you would have done manually, the pipeline is doing. So now the next phase of this pipeline is to push it into our Kubernetes cluster. So for this, I'll take this example. I'll say that Kubernetes cluster. So we have our Kubernetes cluster running in our server, which for now we use it as like my local computer. So to deploy into this dev server. So how do? We go into our Leap initiative and we come down to microservice orchestration, Kubernetes kind cluster. So we'll be having Kubernetes cluster. So first thing, if you don't already have Kubernetes installed, then you have to run this command to have it installed, right? You have to run this command for Windows, you run this command for Mac, Intel, you use that command, and for Apple Silicon Mac, you use this particular command to install the Kubernetes cluster kind cluster. But for me, I already have it installed, so I will just spin it up. I will spin it up in my VS Code. I'll just take this up a bit. So we'll run that command and we'll have a cluster called my cluster created. So this is starting up the Kubernetes cluster. And we've also had a tutorial on Kubernetes and what it is. So we'll just see it. So in the actual classes, this will be done practically. Every person will be able to run this step by step. Whatever I do, you do on your personal computer, so that you're doing it right there. If it breaks for you, then you quickly have that hand holding, right? So everybody's going to look into what happened, why it broke for you. So you're kind of like doing it step by step. And then you have the Leap initiative application, right? So you're not limited, you're not having to bear some cost that is making you trying to run your project fast, so that you don't spend more time, because like in the AWS and those cloud providers, to create a Kubernetes cluster is very costly. And let's say you need about 3 hours of practice, right? That charges you a lot. But with this, you're not being charged for it. So you can have the whole day just playing around with your Kubernetes cluster. So it has been created. So we can do kubectl get nodes, and we can see our cluster has been created. So now we have Kubernetes cluster created in our computer. So now we can update our pipeline to deploy into Kubernetes cluster. But one of the latest advancements in this world of CI/CD, which is what we are going to be teaching. We are going to be teaching this latest advancement. That is what is called Argo CD. So there's what is called Argo CD. We'll take Argo CD to be like a human being. Not that it's a human being, we will say, because it is very intelligent in a way. Okay, no, using human being as example may not be very good for our demo, right? We're trying to automate and don't want it to look like we're using a human being for any of the processes. So yes, let's use this. So for example, Argo CD. What Argo CD does is that it's a tool that makes our CI/CD pipeline much more robust, right? What it does is we want to have a system of knowing the changes that are being put into our Kubernetes cluster. We don't want to manually send things into our Kubernetes cluster. So Argo CD gives us the functionality of putting our configuration file, because to deploy your application into Kubernetes cluster, you need to write it in a manifest file. A manifest file is what it's called. So that's where you specify the configuration and the image name and how many pods you want it to run and the service resource, everything that we explained, right? The deployment resource and everything, the pod and everything, what pod needs to be exposed and all. So you write it in a file, and then you apply the file into your Kubernetes cluster, and then it knows what to do. It spins up the pods. So now, long before Argo CD, what happens is we have that file, but sometimes you can wake up or you can log into work and see that someone has deployed something into your Kubernetes cluster without you knowing. So we want to have a way that this Argo CD is configured to look at a repository. So we can create another repo where we will keep the manifest file for our configurations. So we can call it Kubernetes deployment. So we are going to create a repo shortly, which we are going to call Kubernetes deployment. So now this Argo CD is going to be watching this Kubernetes deployment repo for us. So it's going to be watching it, and it is the one that is going to do the actual deployment. So the CI/CD pipeline usually would do the actual deployment, but the advent of Argo CD is the latest advanced tool that is out there, and we need to teach you in a way that is up to speed, up to date, right? So the CI/CD pipeline, what it's now going to do is this Argo CD watches this repo. It will be watching this repo, and any change, it is configured automatically that Argo CD works in a way that any change that happens on this particular repository, it is going to deploy that change into the Kubernetes cluster. So now the configuration file that specifies that image, because the way it works is in that manifest file that you are going to apply into Kubernetes, you are going to specify the image, and that image which we have built is going to now be pulled by Kubernetes. Kubernetes will now go on to our Docker hub, and then pull that image and create pods out of that image. So the configuration, telling it how many pods, what is the image name and all, right? That configuration, we keep it in a separate repo so that we can also review it, right? So that we can also review it. Now, we've created a pipeline. The pipeline has pushed the image into the repo. Now we can come together and approve on the configuration file that will be deployed into Kubernetes. So when we approve on it and we push or merge into this particular repository, then Argo CD will pick up the changes and then deploy it into the Kubernetes cluster. So how does the CI/CD pipeline enable this an update for the entire flow? So the CI/CD pipeline, we now configure it. We configure it when we want to do the end-to-end automation. When we are doing the end-to-end automation, then the CI/CD pipeline, then it will update this repo. It will update this file in the repo, and when it updates it, then Argo CD will pick it up and deploy it. So it goes from this to the CI/CD pipeline, and then the CI/CD pipeline triggers this repository, and then it triggers Git or it triggers Argo CD, and then Argo CD deploys it into the Kubernetes cluster. Okay. So now we will go on to our GitHub. We've created our kind cluster. So go into our GitHub and create a new pipeline. So right here, create a new repository, sorry. So create a new repository. I will call it Kubernetes deployment. Kubernetes deployment. So we get it created. So now we'll come and clone it into our VS Code. So we'll do git clone. So this has been cloned. We'll see it Kubernetes, where is it? Kubernetes deployment. So we'll go into that folder, Kubernetes deployment. So now we can now add the manifest file of our application. Okay, so we've added this. Now let us look at this. So now this is the resource called deployment. Don't worry, you'll have in-depth tutorial on Kubernetes and how this configuration files, what they look like, and how to write them, what they actually mean, what this metadata, what this replicas and everything actually is. So now we can call it, we can give different app name, we can do whatever we want to do with all this. So replicas, we are saying let it spin up 3 pods of our application. So that's like high availability. We can change it to 10 if we want 10 pods, but they are all resource, right? If you have a lot of resource, you can scale it up as much as you want. So now this is where we update the image name. So let's go and get the correct image name. So what is our image name here? Copy. So we will replace this image name. Then what is the tag? The tag is 1.0.0 then -2, right? Build 2. Just to confirm, this tag is what we are using. We are using this tag, this particular image. So this has been specified here. So now, so this is where we create the service application, the service resource. So we'll call it this name. This is where we give it a name, and then it is going to pick up all the pods that have this label, the deployment resource that have this label. We are going to explain all this in much more detail. Okay, so this is what it looks like. We are going to push this into the repo. So we do git add, and we do git status, and we do git commit -m. We can say pushed deployment script deployment manifest file into repo. So git push origin main. So it has been pushed. So if we check, we will now refresh and we'll see. So we see it that the deployment file is here. So what we are going to do is we are going to create another pipeline that is going to run to deploy it or to update the manifest file so that Argo CD will pick it up. So we'll create another pipeline. It will be called Kubernetes deploy. Call it Kubernetes deployment. It will be a pipeline. So same old pipeline from SCM, Git, and then we'll put in the repository. So the repository URL is this. Put it, and then the credentials, we're going to be using the same GitHub credentials. And what branch? Branch main. And then it's going to look for a Jenkins file there. So we are going to also create a Jenkins file and add there. So we apply and we save. So we go to configure again. We've missed something. This particular pipeline is going to be parameterized. So we are going to add a parameter. So it's going to be a string parameter, and the parameter is going to be Docker tag, and then the value will be latest. So this is a parameter that the other pipeline is going to use it to trigger this pipeline. So the other pipeline is going to use it to trigger this pipeline for it to run. So you see that everything will work as a flow. So Docker tag. So we're going to apply and then save. So this is, we are now having two CI/CD pipelines created. So next we are going to update this to add that stage whereby after it's successful, then it's going to trigger this one to start automatically. Okay, so now we have to install, now we have to install Argo CD in our Kubernetes cluster so that we can set up the Argo CD. So in our Kubernetes cluster, we will run a command . So when we do kubectl, these are Kubernetes related commands. kubectl get nodes, we see that our cluster is running. So now we are going to create a namespace called Argo CD, and then we are going to actually we are going to create an Argo CD namespace and take it up from there. So I'll just pick up the actual command. So this is going to create an Argo CD namespace. So if we do kubectl get namespace, we're going to see Argo CD namespace created 16 seconds ago. So now we are going to install Argo CD by running this command. Argo CD is being installed into our Kubernetes cluster. It has been installed. So we can try to see kubectl get all -n is where we specify the namespace -n Argo CD. So Argo, we want to get everything that is, we want to see everything that is in the Argo CD namespace. It may take about maybe 1 minute to 2 minutes, but everything, when you see 1/1, it means 1/1. It means it's now up and running. It means everything is up and running. So how do we access? Argo CD has a UI. So we are going to try to access our Argo CD UI by running this command. So this has port forwarded it to 8080 localhost 8080. So when we go into our browser, we are going to see Argo CD running, and then we are going to be able to configure Argo CD from there. Okay, so go to advanced, proceed. So this is Argo CD running on our Kubernetes cluster. So the initial password is always admin, the initial username is always admin, and then the password, we have to get it through a command to get the initial password. So this command gets us the initial password. So this command gets us the initial password. So we'll copy this and paste it into the UI. Yeah, so what happened there was this percentage sign that followed it. Should have not added it. Okay, so this is our Argo CD UI. This is very, very good to have in your organization. This becomes the only manager that can push changes into your Kubernetes cluster, and then you can see a lot of things regarding how the application is doing on your Kubernetes cluster. So first things first, we are going to link it to our repository. So you come into settings, and then remember from this, we'll be tracking what we are doing. It needs to know what repository to connect to. So this is our Argo CD. This is our Argo CD. So now we'll do this step where we link it to this repository. So we are going to link it to our GitHub to actually. So we come in here and then get the name DevOps class project default. Then we pick our URL, our repository URL, paste it, and then username is Ekele James, and then the password is our token, right? So I'll just grab my token off camera and then put it. So put my this here and then we connect. So it's loading. Okay, we are going to see that it connected to our repository perfectly. So now next thing is we are going to create an application. But before we create an application, let's ensure that we have the repository populated with the correct file that we need to put in there. Okay, so now we need to create a Jenkins file. Remember that this other pipeline, it is configured to look for Jenkins file in this repository. So we need to put a Jenkins file in this repository. And then we also need to update this pipeline, as we've said, to have the Jenkins file have a stage that will trigger this other pipeline. So we'll go into this. We'll come out of this and then we'll cd into pipeline test, which is our folder. And then this Jenkins file will add one last step for it to trigger this the other pipeline. So we'll add a stage, this stage, trigger manifest update. So it's going to update the manifest file. So what it is going to trigger a build job. And what is the build job's name? On our pipeline, what is the job name? Let's go and check this job. What is its name? It's called Kubernetes deployment. Kubernetes deployment. So we are going to copy this. This is the job we want at the end of the day after our pipeline has pushed into the repo. After it has pushed this Docker image, let it update. Let it trigger this pipeline, triggering this pipeline job. So we'll replace it here. Job name, this is the job name, and it will trigger it with Docker tag as the parameter. We created a parameter, right? This particular pipeline is a parameterized pipeline. So we'll check what was the tag that we are using. The tag we are using for the parameter is docker underscore tag. So apply, save, and we update this. This is the tag, docker underscore tag. So now we are going to push this. Git add. So we can do git status first to see, then we do git add, then we do git commit -m. We say updated job trigger stage in Jenkins pipeline, in Jenkins file. So we'll do git push origin main. So we can see on our repo, when we come to our repositories, we will see that this pipeline test repo will see the update pushed. We'll see the update pushed. We'll see it has now been pushed, this tag. So when next our pipeline run, it is going to have an extra stage, which is this trigger manifest update stage. So one more thing, on this our pipeline, we need to have its own Jenkins file, because its own pipeline, this pipeline, will be needing Jenkins file in the repo. So we'll put its own Jenkins file. So this is the repo. We'll now populate it with its own Jenkins file. Okay. So this is its own Jenkins file. So we are going to update it. This is the stage. We are going to update it. What Git URL is it going to look at? What is our Git repo? So we'll take it, our Git repo, we can take it from here as well. And then we update it here. So we are telling this particular pipeline to check out the source code from this our repository. This repository is where we are going to have where we already have the deployment configuration for our image. So this is going to tell the Argo CD, is going to tell Kubernetes to pull this our image and run it for us to see. So this is what it will do. It will use GitHub credential. In this stage, it is going to update the repository. It's going to use this GitHub credentials. Our name is going to use our password from this GitHub credential, GitHub, this credential that we already have. It's going to look at this file, right? Then it's going to make an update to the file. It's going to make an update. So we'll update this to the name of our actual file in our repository. So what is the name of our application? It's called DevOps class app. So beware of this. Going to replace it here. And then this tag has underscore. That is what we are actually using. That's the tag that we created. Okay, just this looks good. Then also here we are going to update the repo name. So this is just like it will update the file. So what this pipeline will do is whenever each time it runs, it will take the latest Docker tag, which will come from the build number, right? The build number of that other pipeline. It will take it, pick it up, and come and update this file. So it will update it. If we run build 3, it will come into our repo. What we would have done manually, it will do it. It will come into our repo, change this to 3. When we do build 4, it will change this to 4. Why it does this is so that it helps us always pull the latest, because when you create a new image and push it there, our configuration might still be pointing to -2, so we need to point it to -3, right? So the pipeline does it for us instead of us manually doing it. So that's what it's doing. So it will now git add, right? It will git add by itself what we would have done manually. It will git add, it will git commit, and then it will git push it, right? It will push it, and then Argo CD will pick it up and then begin to deploy it into our Kubernetes cluster. So we'll CD out and then clear screen, then CD into this folder, Kubernetes deployment, and then we'll do git status, then we'll do git add dot, and then git status again, then git commit -m. So we'll say added Jenkins file. So then we do git push origin main. So we have it now pushed. This is our Argo CD. This is our Jenkins. And when we refresh our repo, we'll see that we now have Jenkins file created, added into here, and this Jenkins file is going to be used by the by this particular job, by this 2 job. So we have everything set up now. We will set up our Argo CD. We'll create a new app for our Argo CD once we've checked. So once we've checked, we've run this and see that it is working. So let's run and see that our pipeline is working perfectly. This one will run, push it to our Docker Hub, and then it will trigger the second pipeline to run as well. So it has started. So it seems to be running. Okay, it seems to have been successful. So what happened, it went through the steps, logged into Docker, pushed it into Docker. So we'll have build 3 now in our Docker Hub image for build 3. Then it kickstarted this job, and this job ran successfully before it showed us that it has ended there. So when we refresh, we can see build 3 for the image show up here. So we see it 1.0.0-3. So we will now check that the other pipeline ran. So we see this other pipeline ran successfully. Let's see the console output. So it triggered this pipeline by itself. So this is what it does. It did this. So started by upstream. This was the pipeline that started it. So build number 3 started it. So it got started. It does all the connecting to Git and all. Then it updated our YAML file. So it updated this our YAML file. Now you see it 3. It was 2 here, right? Now it has changed to 3. So that's the update that it does. It looks good. So now we can now go into our Argo CD and create this application. This application we are going to create is now what this Argo CD now, we are now telling it to watch this particular repo and deploy it into the Kubernetes cluster. This is where we'll do the linkage, so pay close attention. What would we call our app name? We'll call it DevOps class app, DevOps class, maybe Argo CD. DevOps class Argo CD. Project name, we'll call it default, and then we'll set this, we can leave it as automatic sync. Automatic sync, it means whenever it is pushed, whenever any change is pushed into that repository, it will automatically just deploy the change into our so we want to keep it automatic. We don't want to keep anything manual for us to have to come into it and do anything. CI/CD pipeline is a complete automation, so we want to make everything flow down into the Kubernetes cluster. So repository URL, this is the repository URL it should watch, which corresponds to this. It should watch this, right? So that whenever this is updated by the Jenkins file, this maybe next time we run it, this will be updated to 4, and then it will redo it. So we are soon going to see, we are just setting up the pipeline, and this is taking about an hour plus. This is because it's a tutorial, right? When you know how to create a pipeline, this takes you less than 15 to 30 minutes to actually create, but we are going to see the actual end-to-end. So in here, we've pointed it to the repository path. The file is in the actual path in the repo. So it's asking where should it find the deployment file, the Kubernetes deployment file, and we told it it will find it in the actual directory. So like this is the actual directory, right? There's no other folder in here, so this is plainly in the actual directory. So it's going to find it. What Kubernetes cluster should it deploy it to? Is deploying it into the Kubernetes cluster which it is running on right now. So what namespace? We didn't create a new namespace, so we'll leave it to deploy into the default namespace. And this is all, so we'll have it created. So Argo CD gives us a form of UI whereby we can see what is going on. So we can try to see it get, now it is going into Docker Hub. Now pulling it, we specified 3 ports, right? Now it is, these are the 3 ports. You see pod. So our application is running inside of this pod. So looks good. We have this green love symbol. So it shows that our application has been deployed into our Kubernetes cluster and it looks good. So we're going to come in here and then we can check to see. So clear the screen. We say kubectl get ports in the default namespace, and we'll see our ports DevOps demo. DevOps demo is what you see here, right? DevOps demo. So that's the name of the port. How many did we specify? 3. So that's why you have 3 of the ports. They are all running. How do we see these ports? How do we access our service? Our service is going to be accessed on port in the container. It's going to be accessed on port 80 on the container, but we need to expose our cluster IP for us to be able to see it. So now we'll do kubectl get service. Oh, syntax error, kubectl. Okay, kubectl, our service is cluster IP, so we are going to try to expose this our service so that we can be able to see our application running. So we are going to run the command to expose our service. So we're going to run this command. We want to expose it so that this port, what we have specified on this service is going to be exposed on port 80 of the service, and the service is actually routing into port 80 of the container. So what that shows us from here is this diagram. This is the service resource. So the service also has its own port. We open as port 80 and our container also is port 80. So that's what it's doing. So we are going to open port 9000 on our own computer to be able to access it. So let's see practically what is going on. So here 9000 on our server. This is where it will be 9000, and then on our service what we've exposed is port 80 and also in our ports we've exposed it to port 80, for example, right? So what happens is we route on our side, we'll do localhost 9000. Localhost 9000 will route to service port 80, and service port 80 will route to this many ports. For us, we specify 3 and we see the 3 ports, so it will route into these ports and we'll be able to see our application. So let's paste the command. So this is kubectl port forward service, the service name, onto our local computer port 9000. I believe port 9000 is free on our local computer, and then this is the port of the service, port 80. So now the port is being forwarded. So the port is being forwarded. So now we can go and we can see our application on localhost port 9000. Yep, this is our application that we created. So it says DevOps Learning Project 3-color box application. So voila, this is the end-to-end. So this is the end-to-end. Now we'll just do one more run for us to see what it all looks like, right? We said the developers, when they want to make a change, then they will, make a change, right? So what we want to do is, let's change this red color. Let's change the color red. Like, let's do something wrong, right? Let's do something traditionally not correct, right? Red color, this looks correct, right? This blue is not a very perfect blue. So let's change this red to this green and change this green to this red, for example, right? Then we'll see how that whole thing happens by just a click of our pipeline, right? By just a click of our pipeline. So we'll go, what the developer would do, we are now simulating the developer side of things. So what the developer will do, cd into pipeline test. So the developer will come in here and this is the actual file. This is the actual file. So the developer comes in here, and this is where we will change the color. So we'll take this, we'll copy it, kind of put it out here, and then take this, copy it, replace it with this, and then we'll do that again and see. Okay. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, let's so we'll copy this and put it here just to have it there. So we'll now copy this, replace it here, and then take this and then replace it here, right? This looks more like it. We've replaced green to be on the red side, and we've replaced red to be on the green side. So let's check, right? This is it. So they will now git status. So git add. This is the process where we are now doing this now, where they are pushing into this particular repo, pushing into this repo. So that's what we are doing. Then git commit -m, then we say making a change to the colors. Then git push origin main. So now it has been pushed into the repository. We can check. So pipeline test. So we see that it has been pushed, say making changes to the color, and we see that we've made that change to the color in here. So the change has been made. So now we can go into our Jenkins, and this is the pipeline to trigger. So now we will trigger this pipeline. It will run, it will do everything. We just sit down and observe. This is what you do as a DevOps engineer. So once they push it, most times, like because they push through merge request, so you might be part of those that will approve the merge request. So once it is merged and it has been, you now see it that the changes have been pushed to the repo successfully, then the developers can be the one to trigger the pipeline themselves, or the pipeline can trigger automatically depending on how you configured it. For us, we configured it to run manually, so that's why I came in here and ran the pipeline myself. So now it is doing all the things by itself, just taking a few minutes. It's now successful. The pipeline has run. That's all, less than a minute. So now all the updates have been done. Algo CD, we are watching Algo CD. So Algo CD is going to pick up that change, right? And we can validate that in our repo, it must have changed to build 4. So it must have been updated to build 4. The image name, yeah, it has been changed to 4. So we'll see Algo CD should now pick up, Argo CD will pick up the changes and then deploy it into the Kubernetes cluster. So sometimes you could just wait for a while, or you could refresh and see. Or we can click on the sync, which it will sync it. So when we synchronize, usually it will pick it up by itself. So it has picked up the new change, and then it will pull down our old Docker pods and spin up new one, right? This is what it's doing. It has pulled down the old one and it has spinned up a new one. So now when we go back to our UI, we should see this change when we refresh. We are going to, so what happens is, because it got bounced, we had to port forward again. So when we port forward again, we saw the change. Okay, so the change that we made was not very perfect. I think I understand that we have to, it became a blend. It has to be both of them, right? So we'll go back and do this change again, and that is good. One more time, we'll do the change. So it has to, we switch this from this. So this is what I alluded to, right? That when the developers, they do something and they see that it's not exactly what they want, then they redo it again, right? So instead of the back and forth that they used to have, the CI/CD pipeline allows us for within 3 to 5 minutes we see our change. So we swapped this to this. This means we need to also swap this to this. That's what it means for us to get that perfect color. So I'll keep this here, then I'll take this, replace it here, then I'll take this from here, replace it here. So I think this is much more perfect. So now the color will look good. So now we'll git add again. We'll do git commit -m, updating the colors better. Then we git push origin main. So it has been pushed. So we will run our pipeline again. So we see the pipeline run. So once it is successful, then we'll monitor Argo CD to pick up the changes. So we'll see, we'll wait for our build to be successful. Our build is successful. That means our deployment file has been updated to build 5, to image tag 5. And if we want to verify, we will see that image tag 5 would be showing up here, right? So -5, because it has pushed it. So we'll wait and see. Argo CD will pick it up itself and then deploy it into our cluster. Then we can refresh and see what's going on. Now it's picked it by itself. So I think like 2 to 3 minutes, right? It will pick it by itself. We didn't need to do anything. It picked it up by itself. So it's gonna deploy it into our cluster. All right. So I think when we come here, it has been deployed successfully. So you see the same few seconds ago. So I think if we come here, then we can refresh. So because it got bounced, we need to port forward again. So we are going to port forward again and see it. Now this is because we are running it locally, right? If we use like a load balancer method, which we'll do that in-depth practice in the class. If we use a load balancer method, it is not going to need to actually port forward all the time. Port forwarding is because we are just doing some little in-house practice here. So that's why we are needing to do the port forward. Yeah, so see it, we've changed it, we've done this wrong thing. So we've changed green, the color, it has changed. So yeah, that is the end-to-end that happens with your CI/CD pipeline. So thank you very much for this tutorial, and we'll see in the next tutorial where we will use the LEAP initiative to practice Kafka administration.